This video will review Section F of the 2020 Election Administration and Voting Survey, or EVES. The goal of this section is to understand voter participation in the 2020 general election and the use of election technology. You can find similar presentations for the other 5 sections of the survey on the EVES portal and the Election Assistance Commission website. As you watch this video, you might want to follow along with the PDF version of the survey, which can be found on the Downloads page of the EVES portal. Section F of EVES asks about the following information about the 2020 general election. First, how many people cast a ballot that was counted for the election, and how did they cast those ballots? You'll also report the source of that data on participation. Second, what kind of poll book and voting technology did your jurisdiction use to support its election efforts? Third, where does your jurisdiction tabulate its votes? And finally, do you have any additional information about your jurisdiction's election experience that you wish to share with the EAC? Question F1 asks about the total number of voters who cast a ballot that was counted for the 2020 general election from your jurisdiction. You'll first report the total number in F1A, and then in the sub-questions, you'll break this down according to the mode by which these ballots were cast. A few things to keep in mind as you do this. F1B is for individuals who voted at a physical polling place on election day, and this should not include people who submitted a provisional ballot or who dropped off their absentee or by-mail ballot at a physical polling place. Question F1C covers UOCAVA voters. While you will have reported the number of UOCAVA ballots sent in Section B, this question is intended to capture how many UOCAVA voters cast successful ballots for the election, whether using a regular ballot or the federal write-in absentee ballot. Question F1D is for voters who used a domestic civilian by-mail ballot to vote. This should not include by-mail ballots cast in an all-vote-by-mail jurisdiction, as those will be reported in F1G. F1E is for individuals who submitted a provisional ballot. This includes provisional ballots that were counted either in full or in part. F1F is for individuals who voted in person at an early voting location, and the total you report here should also include in-person absentee voting if it's allowed in your jurisdiction. F1G is for individuals who cast a mail ballot in an all-vote-by-mail jurisdiction. These are jurisdictions or states that send mail ballots to all registered voters without the voter having to request the ballot. If your jurisdiction is not an all-vote-by-mail jurisdiction, your domestic civilian mail voters will be recorded in F1D. Lastly, if your jurisdiction allows for another mode of participation that is not listed here, use F1H to record it and the number of voters who successfully cast a ballot using that mode. The numbers you report in items F1B through F1H should sum to the total number of participants you recorded in F1A. If a mode of voting is not available in your jurisdiction, report does not apply for that question. For instance, if your state does not offer provisional ballots, report does not apply in F1E. Next, in F2, you'll report the source of the data you recorded in question F1. Select the option that best represents how your jurisdiction calculates its participation numbers. These sources include poll books and the number of by-mail and provisional participants, the number of ballots counted, vote history, the number of votes cast, or other. If you select the other option, include a description. The next set of questions asks about your jurisdiction's use of election technology to assist with the voting process. F3 and F4 ask about the use of electronic and paper poll books, respectively. Electronic poll books are similar to printed poll books in that they list all registered voters, but electronic poll books incorporate some type of hardware or software component. Please note that these questions are about poll books only, not about any machine used to record or tally votes. For F3 and F4, answer yes or no to whether you use electronic or paper poll books to sign voters in, update voter history, or look up polling places. If you use poll books for another purpose, use F3D or F4D to record that. If your jurisdiction did not use any electronic poll books for the 2020 general election, you may respond no to all the F3 items. Likewise, if you did not use any paper poll books, you may select no for all the F4 items. Next, you will report information about the voting equipment used for the 2020 general election. The EAC has 7 types of voting equipment it would like you to report on. Direct recording electronic devices, or DREs, allow a voter to vote using a touchscreen, monitor, wheel, or other device, and record the votes electronically on the device. Some DREs capture the votes both electronically and on a paper printout, which we call a DRE with a voter-verified paper audit trail, or VVPAT. You'll report on your jurisdiction's use of these devices in question F6. Other DREs only capture the votes electronically, which we call DREs without VVPAT. You'll report on these devices in question F5. There are also electronic voting devices that are similar to a DRE with VVPAT, but they merely mark a ballot and do not tabulate votes. These devices are commonly referred to as ballot marking devices. The paper records produced by these systems can be tabulated by hand or in conjunction with a scanner. You'll report on ballot marking devices in F7. Scanners are devices that tabulate paper records marked by a voter by hand or via a ballot marking device. These are sometimes referred to as optical scanners, but digital scanning technology is also commonly used now. Scanners can be used in precinct as well as at a central location. You'll report both types of scanners in F8. Punch card and lever machines will be reported in F9 and F10. Finally, if your jurisdiction conducts a hand count of ballots, you'll report on that in F11. For each of these types of equipment, there are a few additional items you'll report on. The first item you'll report is whether the type of equipment was used in your jurisdiction for the 2020 general election. Select yes if any type of this equipment was in use, and no if not. If you do not use a type of equipment, you do not need to fill out the other questions in that section and can move on to the next type of equipment. The next thing you'll report is the make and model of the equipment you used. For these questions, we want you to focus on the manufacturer of your equipment as opposed to your vendor or service provider. For DREs with and without a VVPAT, ballot marking devices, and scanners, the templates have drop-down menus with the most common makes and models of equipment. These drop-down menus will be organized alphabetically by the model name, with the make of the equipment listed in parentheses. There is also an other option available if your equipment is not already listed in the drop-down menus. For punch card and lever systems, you'll need to write in your make and model. The questions will have space for you to list up to 3 makes and models for each equipment type. If you have additional makes and models to report on, please put that information in the F5 through F11 comments section. Next, you'll report the number of machines deployed for each make and model. When reporting these numbers, you should only include machines that were actively used during the election. For instance, If your jurisdiction had a machine that was kept in storage throughout the voting period, it should not be included in this count. If your jurisdiction doesn't track information about the number of machines deployed, select Data Not Available as your response. You do not need to report any equipment make, model, or count information for hand counts. Lastly, for each type of equipment, you'll report on what purposes it was used for, including in-precinct election day regular balloting, accessibility for voters with disabilities, provisional voting, in-person early voting, or counting by mail ballots. You can select all that apply here. There are a lot of nuances in how jurisdictions use their voting equipment. We encourage you to use the comments box appended to these questions to note any item where you feel like the options don't quite capture your jurisdiction accurately. Question F12 records information about where votes are tallied in your jurisdiction. We're interested in knowing where the ballot is tabulated, not the import of that tabulation into the jurisdiction's results management system. For instance, a DRE that's in a polling place tabulates in the precinct or polling place, whether or not the aggregation of the results from all DREs is processed at a central location. There are 5 different equipment uses you will report the vote tally location for. This is the same list of equipment uses you saw in the previous set of questions. For each equipment use, there are 5 options to select from. If your vote tallies take place in a centralized location, like a county election office, select Central Location. If your votes are tallied in the location they're cast or returned to, select Precinct or Polling Location. If your jurisdiction uses a mixture of both, select both Central and Precinct Location. If your jurisdiction does not use your voting equipment for the listed purpose, select Does Not Apply. For instance, if your state does not offer provisional ballots, you'll report Does Not Apply for F12C. If the data for where ballots are tallied is not tracked, select Data Not Available. The final question in Section F is about your jurisdiction's experiences during the 2020 general election, particularly about topics that haven't been covered in previous EVES questions. You can use this space to pass along anything you'd like the EAC to know about your experiences, your challenges, and your successes in this election. Use as much space as you'd like. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. We encourage you to carefully read through each section before answering any of the questions to ensure you're accurately reporting your data. A PDF of all EVES questions is on the Downloads page of the EVES portal. We also encourage you to use the comment boxes for each question to provide us with additional information and context. This will help us analyze and report your data accurately. If you need additional assistance with anything related to EVES, please don't hesitate to contact us at eavs@forsmarshgroup.com. Thank you, and we appreciate your time and your contributions to the 2020 EVES.